We are live. Okay, let me add everyone in my server and then tweet it, and then I'll give a quick TLDR of everything, and hopefully Rouge will correct me if I'm wrong or miss anything. Everyone
Alright.
live. Because I don't know every little detail on the whole Mint Heart thing.
I know a substantial amount, but I wouldn't say I know everything.
Yeah. Live.
Someone's asking how to tune in. Is this going to be on YouTube? Is this on YouTube now? Should
Yes,
people
this
just
is.
log into the Discord?
This is on YouTube, and I added everyone with the link and announcements. I just tweeted out "We live" with the link to the stream.
Okay, that's great. I'll provide them with that link.
Oh, I see who's asking. I can. There you go. PurpleTinker's apology. There we go. Okay. So, a quick TLDR of the whole Mint Heart situation. If you don't know who Mint Heart is, I'll just try to do this as fast as I can so I don't have to describe every little detail. Mint Heart is a victim of a person called Vita. Vita was a pretty. Would you say he was a pretty big YouTuber in the brony drama community, Rouge?
I would say like probably a long time ago when he did his call out about Toon Critic, but I would say that by the time that he was outed and stuff, it was pretty dead.
Yeah, so one trick wonder, basically. So basically, person Mint Heart.
If I recall, he also outed. I'm sorry. If I recall, but this is probably pertinent. I think he also outed Grizzly the Medic.
Yeah,
He also outed,
or at least helped to out him.
He also outed Fusion and Ichabod as well, but his motives behind it were probably ill-intended.
Clout chasing.
Yeah.
No, they were people that went after the same victim.
Yeah, so Mint Heart was Mint Heart. What? So Vita was grooming a person called Mint Heart for how many years was it? Pretty sure since they were 14 or something like that.
Yeah, so like at least somewhere between 4 and 6 years, I want to say. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'll say 4 years just to be safe. So about 4 years. And do you want to run down what happened with Purple Tinker and Mint Rouge?
No, I think you guys can handle it. I just want to be here to be on the sideline.
Okay, so
it's my mistake. How about I explain it and then you guys can check me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
I feel it's my mistake. It's my problem to fix, as much as one can fix something like this. What happened was, I had been a friend of Mint Heart's because after the Grizzly the Medic thing came out, I tried to hold BronyCon to task for it. They did basically jack and shit because they were afraid of potential legal complications or whatnot if they got involved. I got really angry and I said, look, if BronyCon isn't going to do anything for these victims, I will. So I established a $10,000 trust fund for Mint Heart, and I established a $10,000 trust fund for one of the other victims. The others declined the offer, but and so I was involved in helping Mint Heart basically get their adult life started. When they turned 18, the money would become theirs, and I sent it to them back in June-ish, July-ish, whenever they turned 18. So that's how I knew Mint Heart. It's ironic because I was actually trying to help them because they're a victim of an abuser. And I periodically check in on them, say, hey, are you doing okay? Is there anything you need? Do you need me to like buy you supplies or something? Because, they just turned 18. They just started their adult life. They just separated from their parents and etc. So around a week before Thanksgiving, I tweet out a message saying, look, if you're traveling during Thanksgiving, I'm just going to block you. You're an enemy, and not just of me, you're an enemy of the country. You're spreading a disease, etc. And after that, you guys can still hear me, right? I'm hearing a bunch of weird sounds. Okay, that's just Discord being discordant. Anyways.
That's people leaving and rejoining. Go ahead.
Yeah. A day or two before Thanksgiving, I think, when all this stuff blew up, I found out that Mint Heart was traveling for the holidays, and I contacted them frantically. Turns out they were already waiting for their ground transportation to the airport. And I said, look, please don't do this. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. And I went way too far. I said, if you do this, you will become worse than Vita. And that was the worst thing that I said, and probably pretty much the worst thing I could have said. And that's what led to all of this blowing up. That I said, if you travel during the pandemic after being warned you can kill someone, you will be worse than your abuser. And it was wrong of me. It was wrong. It was not only wrong to say, it was morally wrong. I was the moral calculus that I was using was twisted and incorrect. I believed it when I said it. I was again caught up in that righteous wrath of please don't go. I'm trying to save lives, and I found a way to justify it. It was a combination of it was a combination of a rage explosion because I am a rageaholic and an autistic meltdown because I am autistic. I was hammering over and over on the same points. And looking back, I can see now that, first off, that I was wrong. I was wrong to compare them to Vita, no matter what, and certainly for this. And second off, I can see that it was simply it was a rage explosion. It was I fell off the rage wagon, and I did it to someone who is vulnerable, and I should never have done that. And I feel terrible about it. Is that a fair summary of what happened?
I would say so.
Yeah, same here. It seems pretty good from what I remember, but then again, my memory isn't the best thing to rely on. But why wouldn't you recommend Mint to fly something like United, something that, you know, I think it's United or Delta. I think United and Delta do the same thing where you have to get checked, you have to social distance on the plane along with wear a mask, and the plane gets sanitized every time it lands.
Um,
Um, are you talking to me or to her?
To you.
I was just going to say that United has the extra one of where they check you before. I think it's before you board the plane, um, both ways.
Yeah.
But the question was for me, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, it's for you.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's what. No. That's what I thought. Um, to be honest, I wasn't even concerned about airline X versus airline Y. I appreciate that United is making those, those restrictions, but ultimately, when you're dealing with a pandemic, there's no such thing as 100% safe unless you literally never leave the house and never have any interaction with anyone or anything from outside of it. Everything is risk reduction, and flying on any airline, including United, is more dangerous than not flying on any airline at all. Um, and also, there's the fact that it's not just about being on the plane, it's also about being in the airport. And people seem to have this idea that if you wear a mask and you social distance, you're 100% safe, and that's not true. Um, you're never 100% safe. So my objection was, if you aren't legally required to travel, or you need to travel to literally save your life, or to like to move, then you shouldn't be traveling. You should be eliminating unnecessary travel. And I've been keeping to this myself. I've been bunkered down since I got back from Europe in March or maybe early April. I forget the exact date. We were on a cruise when this really hit, and we flew back early. We were supposed to go on a tour of Europe, and we've been bunkered down in the apartment ever since.
Oh, I don't really think there's anything. Wait, you still going?
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. Well, you offered to package and send something to Mint. You do realize that can also, you know, she can get COVID like that, right?
Uh, Not really. The risk of that is exceptionally minimal. And certainly the risk of sending a package through the mail is far more minimal than the risk of traveling. By and large, this is passed via aerosols. It's not really passed via stuff on surfaces. And also, the time that it would take for any parcel from here to arrive there, any COVID viruses on the surface would have long since been inactivated.
I mean,
And also, I sanitize everything that I mail. I wipe it down with alcohol wipes that kill everything. So that's not really a thing. But in any case, even if there was a risk of catching it from some droplets on a surface, which there might be, the risk is orders of magnitude smaller than getting on a plane and flying somewhere. Again, it's all about risk reduction. There's no perfect solution. You know, you can wear a mask and I can wear a mask and we can be 6 feet apart from each other and one of us can still get the other sick. But both of us wearing a mask makes us safer than just one of us wearing a mask, which makes us safer from none of us wearing a mask. And the safest thing of all is to never travel or leave the house at all. It's about reducing the risk. And in this case, sending someone something through the mail is a significant risk reduction over traveling. People tend to think either I'm protected or I'm not. And that's a dangerous attitude to have during a pandemic. It's really about higher risk or lower risk. It's not, can I catch it or can I not catch it? It's what is my chance of catching it and how much does a given activity raise that risk? And I don't think that a lot of Americans are not very well educated on this. Our government has deliberately done a terrible job of it because Trump and his supporters largely don't believe this is a real thing. So there hasn't really been a lot of education, but I come from a medical family and I've always stayed up to date on, science and medical research and basic cleanliness practices. And I'm a bit of a germaphobe myself because of issues which aren't really relevant here. But as a result of that, I've learned quite a bit about contagion and how it spreads, how it spreads more, how it spreads less, and and what I see a lot of people doing and saying about this, like, oh, I wear a mask, I'm okay. And that's not how it works. You wear a mask so you're more okay, but you can still catch it and you can still die. You just have a lot less of a chance. And if you're the only one in a mask around a bunch of people who aren't masked, your risk reduction is not very great. Maybe you cut your risk in half, something on that order of magnitude. But it's not like, well, I wear a mask, 99% chance I won't get it. No, it's more like I wear a mask, and if nobody else wears a mask, I reduce my risk by 30 or 40 or 50%. There's still a lot of risk. And that, again, a lot of people don't realize this, which again fed into the notion that I was being completely irrational about this. And I'll say this, my concerns about coronavirus were not irrational, were not wrong, and were not off base. My conduct was what was wrong. My comparing an abuse victim to their abuser for being willing to travel was wrong, dead wrong. But everything that I've said about COVID is not wrong. COVID's deadly, and it can still kill you dead. And it is still best to not travel if you can avoid it. But none of that justifies what I said at all. Uh, I'm allowed to be disappointed in anyone who travels when they don't, strictly speaking, have to, but doing what I did was above and beyond any acceptability. Does any of that make sense?
yeah, I'm curious on why you did it too, because it seems like after mentioned, "Am I worse than Vita?" It seems like you stood on that like glue, like you try to use it against her. If you get what I'm saying.
I tried to use it as a tool to get them to stay home. It was, like I said, it was a combination of a rage explosion or a rageaholic episode and an autistic meltdown. And one thing that one thing that being autistic tends to give me is a real stubbornness. Uh, I I tend to pick my point of view and never stand down from it, and that's what happened here. Much to Mint's harm and my own self-harm, I I I believed what I said. I wasn't I wasn't lying. I wasn't, people said I'm gaslighting. No, I wasn't gaslighting. I genuinely believed that. In the moment, I thought that I was fighting for what's right, just like, when you know, well, both of you, I'm sure, at some point have taken a bad position and later come to regret it, and that's what happened here. But that's why. I am extremely susceptible to guilt, and I'm Jewish. I come from a Jewish background, and the stereotypes are to some degree true. We do traffic a lot in guilt. Um, and whenever I did something wrong, I would receive guilt from it from my parents, and I still feel guilt for stupid things that I did decades ago. I feel guilt for things I might not have even done, but I think maybe I did. I swim in a sea of guilt. It's part of my life. And I thought maybe if I make them feel guilty enough, I'll be able to prevent them from traveling and therefore prevent them from risking their parents' lives, their own life, the lives of random strangers. But I believed what I said. I don't believe it anymore, but I did. I thought that I would be able to use that guilt to motivate them to change their mind, but they are as stubborn as I am. So it didn't work. All I ended up doing was digging my hole deeper. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, Rouge ended up deafening. I was gonna ask her a question. That's great. Let me think for a sec. If you guys want to ask her anything in chat, put it in chat, cause yeah, where's works at cover 19. That's right. Okay, but if someone like Mint had to travel, and had to travel, cause I don't know if you know, but with on police reports how they work and stuff, you have to do it physically. If you do it online, it's not really gonna go anywhere, even if you put a name or any shit like that. It's basically something could happen, but stuff is way more likely to happen if you physically go out there and fill out a police report. Would you say for like Mint's situation, for them to fly something like United, like there's still a risk, but the risk is greatly lowered by a lot?
It's lowered compared to maybe other airlines, but it's still significantly raised compared to not traveling. As for what you said about the police report, I don't know. I had been informed that, obviously that they want stuff done in person, but I don't know to what extent people have changed. Police departments, whatever, have changed their policies in the age of COVID. I know that a lot of stuff is changing. I know that, I think even some courtrooms are conducting trials with, remotely. City councils are holding meetings remotely. I know that a lot of governmental stuff is being done remotely, so I don't know. Um, I can't, I am not in a position of knowledge or authority to answer that question.
Alright, I was gonna say, as a person who helps victims like constantly make police reports, it usually goes nowhere unless they go out there themselves or go out there with their parents and stuff. And it's been
Has that been true since the start of the pandemic?
yeah, I was gonna say it's been consistent this year and last year.
Okay, see, I did not know that. I was under the assumption that because most other places are changing the way they do things due to the pandemic, that the police would do likewise, but I guess it kind of makes sense that they wouldn't. I mean, the police are pretty evil themselves, and they're
Real
also very
lazy.
much aligned with the Republican Party, so they don't believe that COVID's a real threat.
But I wouldn't say traveling, all sorts of traveling puts a great risk, because I'm pretty sure you could just drive over there and sleep in the car, even though that would be very undesirable and most likely shit to do.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
I'm pretty sure people could drive across state or across country. I'm pretty sure it's a form of travel that would be safe, but I would much prefer.
Uh,
Hmm?
yeah, driving wasn't an option. They live really far from where their parents are. So they couldn't have driven that far. And it's funny because FNGR said something on his stream like, well, if Tinker really cared, Tinker would have offered to drive, Minty. I don't drive. I've never driven. I never had a driver's license, so that was never on in the cards. And I don't know if Minty drives, but driving cross country for an 18-year-old might not even be possible because you usually have to be 21 or 25 or something just to rent a car. And I don't know if Minty has a car. So I don't think driving was an option, unfortunately. And trains in this country are seldom an option because, anyways, trains would be just as risky as planes. More so because you'd spend a lot more time en route. So I don't think driving was in the cards.
Okay, there was something interested posted in the comments. Not in the comments of the stream. If you look at the channel above podcast, there's a channel called Comment, and it was by a thing called IATA. I'm gonna post this in the stream so people can look at it. But basically, let's see. The risk of contracting COVID-19 on an airplane remains low in a period where 1.2 billion passengers traveled. Less than 50 cases were trans were reported where transmission. Okay, I'm gonna post this in here. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty reading it because it's on my third monitor and I have to break my neck to read it. Okay, here we go. So it says right here, the risk of contracting COVID-19 on airplane remains low in a period where 1.2 billion passengers traveled. Less than 50 cases were reported where transmission is thought to have been associated with flying. And it links to a little thing in there.
Right. That sounds good, but I'm not sure if I trust data coming from the IATA, because the IATA is not a government regulatory agency. It is a trade agency. It's like trusting the oil companies if the Association of Petroleum Producing Companies or whatever trade group they have says, global warming is fake, because of course they'd say that. The IATA is an organization of airlines. They are a biased source. They have every incentive to cherry pick the data or even to lie. If the data was coming, I mean, mind you, the data sounds good, but I take it with a grain of salt. Um, again, it's like the oil companies saying we don't cause global warming, or the tobacco companies saying we don't cause lung cancer, or Volkswagen saying we don't cheat on our emissions tests. It's a self-policing body run by the airlines themselves. So take that with a grain of salt. If you had any data from, say, the United Nations or whatever the UN's equivalent is, I would give that a lot more weight than anything coming from a trade organization. Wikipedia even mentions that the IATA has been described as a cartel, because that's basically what it is. It's a group of, you know, airlines acting in their own self-interest. So can you trust their numbers? I don't know. I hope you can, but I'm certainly not going to take, their word saying, trust us, it's safe, we run the numbers, any more than I trust any other industry to self-assess its own safety, because they literally need to, by law, put their shareholders ahead of the truth. They are obligated by law to maximize their profit, and unfortunately, that also includes twisting the truth or even lying outright.
I'm trying to look for other numbers on the COVID thing. All I'm finding is I did find a government site, but they're just saying, here's these safety tips you should do before flying. The AMA is so far the
Right,
only thing I could find right now, so.
right. And I mean, maybe I can do some follow-up research on that, because I want to know what regulatory bodies and governmental agencies have to say about it. I just really don't trust what the air travel industry itself says about itself. It's always suspect when an industry says, "Hey guys, we're safe and we do nothing wrong." We've seen it with tobacco, we've seen it with oil and gas, we've seen it with drugs. If you had asked, the drug manufacturers, "Hey, is there an opium crisis or an opiate crisis?" They would have said no, but there was, and people died and people got addicted, and now they're paying the piper. They're giving huge gobs of money to the government because they lied.
So,
So, I mean, I will look for additional data, and as a matter of fact, because I really do want to get the latest information, I'll look that up. That's a good question.
so my question is about how safe it was. It's about the way you acted, at least for me.
That's right.
Hmm?
I feel like we're getting into the weeds about is it safe, is it not safe, how safe it is. It's not about the safety. It's about my behavior.
Yeah,
That was the problem.
yeah.
My intention of trying to limit the spread of a deadly disease was good. Everything that I did with it was bad.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
we covered the way you acted, so I'll just ask one more question about the safety thing. Sorry, I just inhaled something that went down my fucking throat. Um,
Okay.
say, like, hypothetically, I'm not saying they're not true, but hypothetically, let's find out that what they're saying is completely true. Would it be hard to believe considering the safety precautions that certain airlines use, like hand sanitizer, a COVID test, wear a mask, and, all that stuff?
So you're asking if it was true, then what?
Like, do you. I'm trying to say, hypothetically, if it was true, would you believe
Are you
it?
asking if I change my stance if it turns out that the data was accurate?
I'm asking if you would believe it, yes. Like, if the data came out to be
I
true.
believe science. What I believe in is I believe in science. And science, to get a scientific consensus on something, you need more than one study. And you also specifically you need data from unbiased sources. There's this very common thing in industry where the drug manufacturers, for instance, will commission a study to prove that their drug is safe. And the people running that study will intentionally fudge the data or even fudge the methodology of the study to prove the conclusion that people wanted in the first place. And that's not science, that's pseudoscience, that's propaganda. So again, to get this validated, we'd have to get third-party data from a trusted government source. And the sad part is, I'm not even sure if the FAA can be trusted because under Trump, pretty much every government agency in the United States has been basically just puppeting whatever industry wants.
Oh gosh,
I
that's so
think you.
politics.
Oh, I mean, it's true though. So you'd pretty
Hold
much have
on.
to get data from something like
Before.
the United Nations, which doesn't have any one nation's interest in mind, or from several different uh, international aviation authorities. The authorities in say the UK or France or Germany, etc. But yeah, there's always a chance that you can find data that backs it up, and if so, then if so.
Okay. I feel like we kind of went off a little bit right there. You're okay, Songheart.
Cool.
Yeah, just mute, cause, yeah. You're fine, just mute. So, my question is, did you just assume the numbers when Mint said they were going to fly? Did you just assume the numbers were high and the risk was high, or did you do any type of research before then?
I assumed that the numbers for traveling would be higher than the numbers for staying home, and that's true. I
I
just didn't
mean,
know
it
by how
is.
much or how little they would be higher.
I mean, yeah, sure, that's true. If you stay home, you have a less chance, but if you go on a plane and it's still low, Like, did you do any type of research on numbers? Like, of course, it's going to be low if you stay home, lower than if you traveled.
No, because at the end of the day, I wasn't, and I'm still not concerned. I mean, I'm concerned with the numbers in that I want to know them, but ultimately during a pandemic, people talk about individual responsibility. It's everyone's individual responsibility to push the risk as low as possible, which means if you can avoid flying, you should avoid flying. So no, it wasn't about the number. I think the numbers are X and the numbers are actually Y. It was a matter of this trip can be avoided and therefore it should be avoided.
Do you still believe it could be avoided?
I don't know. The only way that I could know that is if I got a, if there was something from the sheriff's office or whatever that Mint was sharing the evidence against Vita with, that would say whether or not they accept evidence remotely or can remote control a computer and get the data that way. You know, that was that was the only thing that was the only thing that made their trip seem like it had something non-optional, where, if traveling meant the case would go through and they'd have a chance at winning, and not traveling would mean that they wouldn't, then that would kind of push the trip into the necessity column. So if they, if someone could find the current policies of whatever police or sheriff's office or whatever, FBI, CIA, whatever the hell they were going to be talking to, saying that, yeah, we still require evidence to be, sent in, and, you know, then yeah, that would change the equation. Then that would mean that their trip was in fact required.
Okay. I mean,
And if it's required, it's required. I mean, like, if you're moving, if someone's moving, if their lease is up and they're moving from California to Nevada, or from, New York to Illinois or whatever, and they have to fly, they have to fly. That's unavoidable. I've
so
just been trying to get people to avoid avoidable stuff.
so have you ever been abused by anyone like Vita for the amount of time that they abused Mint?
Yes and no. I was not abused by a single person like that. I was more abused by pretty much everyone. I was, how every school has one person who is, the nerd, or I don't know, whatever's considered uncool nowadays. I'm very old. But back in the day, there was always one or two people who were the butt of jokes for the entire school. And in my school, that was me. It was me, the nerdy kid, everyone called a faggot. Pardon my French, but that's what they called me. And then there was the fat girl, who everyone made fun of for her weight. And we were bullied continuously throughout school. So I was abused, yes, but not, there was no one abuser. It was more like I was a emotional and verbal punching bag, and occasionally a literal punching bag. They didn't so much punch me, they would more like throw things at me. So yes, I was abused not by a person, but by my entire peer group, which is a different sort of dynamic, but it fucked me up. And actually, a lot of my issues come from that abuse, from that bullying. That's why I like helping people, because I know what it's like to suffer, and I don't want other people to suffer. That's why I do a lot of what I do.
All right. I want to say that's two different types of abuse because, Mint was in a relationship with Vita, trusted Vita for, I'll say, like 4 or 6 years of their life, like Rouge said. Apparently, FGR and Vita is
Yeah,
streaming right
it's
now.
that's that
What
is
the
different.
fuck?
Apparently, Vita is streaming with FNGR.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Um, but that's a different type of
I did say several months ago that FNGR is not too different from FNGR,
Hold on.
and now
FNGR
that's
is
showing
too
that I was
different
right
from
about
Vita.
that.
Yeah, but I wanted to say, um, I don't really think it's. I don't think you can make a call on if it's necessary or not for Mint Heart at all. I don't know if you object to that. Do you?
Uh, no, I don't object to it. I mean, I'm not God. I, 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 at the end of the day, everyone's response to the pandemic is personal, and there's no one person who's an arbiter of this is required, this isn't. It's because the government has not given us restrictions, the government hasn't said you cannot travel, period. It's left to individual responsibility. So everyone's left to determine when is travel required, when is travel optional. I have my ideas on it, and Mint has their ideas on it.
Okay.
And, you know, they differ. Everyone's ideas differ. I'm not saying that I'm, some COVID god.
Right.
I'm just saying stay home if you can stay home.
Yeah, and if somebody like Mint travels, and you can't really come in and say those aren't good reasons and stuff because it's their life. They're traveling. They know the risk, and if it's that important, then it's that important. If it's something that needs to happen, then it needs to happen. To your eyes, it might be something that can be avoided, but to them, like you said to Mint Heart, like Mint Heart said something about killing herself, and you told her, but what was your response? I can't remember exactly, but I remember it was something like,
I said ultimately you can avoid killing yourself, but if you catch COVID, you can't will the virus to not kill you.
yeah, I never recommend
And
telling a
that
suicidal
was,
person that. Go ahead.
yeah, it was terrible for me to say, and I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, it's like at times like those, you shouldn't really tell the person, you can avoid killing yourself and stuff like that, or, you could avoid the trip because to them it's necessary. Like with Mint, it was completely
Well,
necessary.
I would like to note something though. I have been suicidal many times. I've come pretty close, at least once. Um, I did choose to live. So ultimately, suicide, I shouldn't have said to Mint, you can avoid killing yourself. It makes it sound flippant, and it's not. It's it's a life-wrenching thing to be suicidal. It's a horrific trauma, and I was only able to pull myself out of it with the help of friends and loved ones.
Yeah. Okay.
And I shouldn't have said what I said, unquestionably.
Okay. Does
I
anyone
don't
in
take
the
suicide lightly because I've been there myself. I actually had a plan. I had a book of suicide methods.
so
I
if
was again just in the throes of anger.
so you said, some people have their own things if they traveled, and that's up to them, and you can't dictate if they travel or not. How do you feel that I'm going to travel in January to Illinois for personal reasons? I'm not going to say what, but to me, they're very important.
Well, this gets to something that I was going to be addressing anyway, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, a lot of people will say something like, look, I haven't seen my parents in 6 months or 8 months or whatever. I need to see them for my emotional health. It's required. And to that, I'd say no, I don't think it's required. But again, I'm not God. If you think that you emotionally need to see your family for your emotional health, that's on you. And mind you, I think you're wrong. I think you're putting your own needs ahead of the collective good. But like you said, ultimately, I can't stop you. I can just say I think you shouldn't travel.
But you just said a moment ago, like, people have their own issues, and if they think they need it, then they most likely need it. I mean, if somebody's in a bad place in their life and they feel like they're going to kill themselves unless they get so and so help from whoever's across the country, across the planet, or whatever, then they should probably get it. What if somebody actually does hurt themselves because they're not able to get it and they actually do kill themselves?
I guess all you can do is weigh the risks. If you feel like you're going to have a 50% chance of killing yourself if you don't see your parents, then that's higher than by far than your risk of catching COVID from traveling. So then in that case, it is a need.
All
If
right.
it's just, I miss my parents and I want to hug them, I'd say that's different. I'd say stay home.
I don't
But
know
of course,
if.
you have to do whatever minimizes your risk. That's what all of this is about. But you have to realize, and you have to factor into your equation, it's not just about your risk. It's about the risk of everyone who is exposed to you, everyone who is exposed to them, and everyone who's exposed to the people who are exposed to them ad infinitum. That's the thing people aren't realizing. It's not just personal responsibility. We also have to have collective responsibility because ultimately the government isn't telling us you have to stay home and we will give you money so you can stay home. we are left to our own devices, which means we have to do the job of government, which is caring about everyone. So, weigh into it more than just whether you're willing to risk dying. Weigh into it whether you're willing to risk killing. And, there are a lot of things that I feel terrible for not leaving home for. And I'm not talking about, just things that I'm emotionally want, like I want to cruise, I want to go to Disney. Those are just niceties. I want to see my family because I miss them. I'm talking about things like, for instance, I want to be political activism. I want to be protesting on the streets. The only reason I'm not is because I live with two other high risk individuals. And while I'm willing to risk my own life, I'm not willing to risk theirs. So
So if somebody
I,
was to travel and to just tell you, I'm doing this because of my reasons, and can you just trust me? I'm going to do this. Would you trust them?
I'm not a very trusting person in general when it comes to people understanding things like pandemics. So, I mean, the best I could say is I hope that you stay safe and please wear a mask. But am I
Okay.
going to trust some random person to know what's best for them? No, I can't. Because if we could trust people to do the right thing, then America wouldn't have 200 and what is it, 280,000 dead people.
Yeah. I mean,
So ultimately, a lot of
trust?
people out there are making what's that?
Do you trust Mint's decision? Do you trust my decision?
I'd have to know more about your decision, and I'd probably have to know more you know, about Mint's decision.
All
But
right.
I'd say that from what I know about Mint, they might not have had a chance if this if this trip is what would have kept them from committing suicide, then they had to do it. If
Okay.
it's just I'd feel better, then no, that's different. But again, it's similar with the thing with the cops. If the cops would have, you know, if the cops would not work with them remotely, then yeah, it's required.
Okay. Does anyone in chat want to say anything? Because I don't know what else to say. I'm very tired. I'm sorry. Critical is typing. Blake, did you want to say anything? I could unmute you for a second if you wanted. So, do you want to directly say into stream directly to Mint Heart right now? Because I'm not sure if you did it later. That you're sorry though.
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
I am sorry. I should never have said the things to you that I did. It was wrong with me. I acted disgustingly. I I'm not a bad person. I do bad things sometimes for good reasons, and I do terrible things from them. And I did terrible things here, and I'm sorry.
All right.
I know that a sorry won't take back my words or my rage, but I should never have invoked Vita's name.
Yeah. Speaking of the devil, FNGR is just like I'm gonna stream with him now. So, okay. Blake, I'm gonna mute you. There. You're unmuted.
Anthony streaming with Vita talking about bottom of the barrel.
Oh my god, fuck. Is that what you were thinking
I
of?
No. I just thought I need this joke came to my head. I need to say it. But Tinker, I do have a question. I don't know if this has been addressed already.
sure.
Did you know at first why Mint was going, or did you just think she was they were traveling for the sake of traveling?
No, I didn't know. I asked them, and they quickly made it clear. They said that it had to do with the evidence against Vita and giving it to the cops, and that they wanted to see their parents. And so I immediately came up with, alternatives like, what if you can do this remotely? What if you can, what if you can do a WebEx or a Zoom with your parents? What if you can, have the data on the laptop backed up and have it couriered to the cops? I was trying to allow them to do what they wanted to do without traveling. I was trying to facilitate doing these things remotely. So yeah, I knew what was going on. I was trying to prevent it from happening physically. I was trying to say, what are remote alternatives? I will throw as much money as I need to so that you can accomplish what you need to accomplish without leaving your house.
Hmm.
All right. Was that it, Blake?
Yeah, I did. I will need to ask Minhart something in private, but unless anybody else knows, if the material in question and could not be removed from the laptop, would that have been an acceptable reason then to go?
Of course, if you have to go for if like I said before, if the cops would only accept the material from a physical delivery in person by hand of the laptop, then yeah, I mean that'd be first off, that'd make the cops assholes for
I
making
mean,
people
a
travel
cab.
during this. Yeah, they are, but it would definitely make the travel required. Yes.
All right, as long as you understand the importance of why I meant was traveling.
Oh, I understood the importance. That's why I was saying, how can we solve this problem? By nature, when I'm a problem solver, when I see a problem, I want to solve it. I don't want to say give up on it. The opposite. I will keep bashing my head against the problem until it's solved. And I said, okay, Mint wants to get this laptop to the cops. How can I do this without Mint traveling? And I kept trying to solve that problem. And well, we see what happened.
Hmm. All right, I've said my thing.
All right. Okay. I have one thing, and then I'll end the stream because I want to see this Vita and FNGR Epic reuniting. Whatever the fuck. Maybe they'll have fusion in there too. Hey, Throne Tune Critic. Why not? Who knows? We'll probably see that. Tinker. Um. Now this is on the they them things. I just wanted to comment on this real fast, but some people say they them to just address a person in general, like yeah, they went to the store over there or shit like that, because sometimes saying they them will slip off the tongue better. I notice you sometimes make tweets on people that say they them referring to you or other trans people and call them transphobic. I was gonna ask if you could somehow tone that down and try to talk to the person to see if they meant to say they them. I can understand not wanting to be called they them. At the same time, it isn't necessarily transphobic since they them is referring to gender neutral. If it's meant to avoid people's pronouns, like I think FNGR did that to some people, he would say they them instead of saying their pronouns intentionally to avoid their pronouns, then sure. But at the same time, you would need proof for that, because I feel like just saying this person's transphobic for this shit, it kind of dirties the word transphobic, and it makes it so you can really throw it at anyone at that point.
Well, like you said, my concern is when people know the person's pronouns and they're intentionally avoiding using them. Uh, for some reason or combination of reasons, a lot of people got the idea in their head that I used both she and they, or even just they pronouns. And I have my suspicions, but again, it's just my suspicions. I think it's because I look very gender congruous, somewhat androgynous. Like, is that a man or a woman? People say about me. And as a result of that, I think a lot of people on a subconscious level, have a hard time calling me she or her. Um, and that reflects, if anything, unconscious bias, which if it's transphobia, it's not intentional transphobia. When it becomes intentional is, like you said, when someone knows the pronouns. And here's the thing, I've had my pronouns on my bio for years. Um, so, if you don't read them, then, if I direct you to them and you keep using they, them, then either you're just making the same mistake over and over, which is possible, or you're doing it just to get my goat, which is transphobic. Does that make sense?
Well,
While
can
that
I
may be true, oh, Rosa, let me step in
go
for a
ahead?
sec. While that may be true, some people just plain forget, and that may be because as a bad memory. Like, hey, Ruse has got bad memory. I got bad memory. Sometimes
I have a terrible memory. So
yeah.
I forget people's pronouns too. Um, it's when it's repeated over and over, you know. That's the more times it's repeated, the less the I'm forgetful argument holds. Like my dad, I don't think he's actually transphobic, but even for 10 years after I came out, um, holy shit. Apparently FNGR is calling Mint over Skype
Oh
Yeah,
no.
on
that
Vita's stream.
that's why I
Oh
wanted
We're
no.
on
to.
a stream with Vita.
Yeah, he's
What?
streaming with Vita.
He
Now
really,
he's calling
he
her.
really has reached the bottom of the barrel.
Jesus Christ, what the fuck?
I know I used that joke
It's
once
like
before. Don't
we're
care.
trying to chill at this little campfire, talk about this, and meanwhile in the background there's just a big oil field on fire, and that's FNGR stream right now. Jesus Christ, I needed
And they're throwing
time.
they're throwing firecrackers on it.
Yeah, Anthony, what the fuck? I needed time to process everything and to decide if I wanted to be associated with you or not. But like, what the fuck is this? Okay, whatever. And I was gonna say my point wasn't if they know your pronouns and they say they're transphobic. My point is if they intentionally avoid them, which, like I said, sometimes saying they them will roll off the tongue a lot better than saying she her he him. Um, and where else was I going? Hold on.
Well,
And
if they would call cis women they them at the same rate that they call trans women they them, then they're not being transphobic.
yeah, I
But if
mean,
they reserve they them for trans women as a way of avoiding calling them she her, that is transphobic.
to me,
Does that make sense?
yeah, kind of, not really, because the thing is with trans people is sometimes getting used to pronouns can be a bit difficult for people. So what they do is they replace their old pronouns, say like they were he him going to she her, and they replace he him
Right,
with
but
they them
that
too.
that doesn't apply here though. That everyone in the community has always known me as a woman. I transitioned years before I started BronyCon.
Yeah, I was gonna say to Gilded, they is gender neutral, which is why I said earlier it's okay to request to not be called they them, but saying it's transphobic I feel is a reach unless you could prove intent of the person trying to avoid using your pronouns. Which means if they never called you she, her, and stuff like that, then you can't necessarily say that they're avoiding pronouns because they've acknowledged it, they said it in the past, you know?
Right, but if I keep saying please call me she her and they keep responding they them and I say no please call me she her, well see there's the person right now.
Who?
Oh, never mind, I misread that. But yeah, I mean if I say please call me she her and someone refuses to, just because they don't want to, that's transphobic.
Yeah.
Can we agree on that?
To an extent. If someone just learns. If you don't want to be called they them, that's fine, but it's not transphobic. And the thing is, when people. Right after you tell someone your pronouns, right? Sometimes they replace, what they thought you were, he, him, and they put it with they, them, so they can slowly transition to calling you she, her. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, the excuse of just meeting someone doesn't really apply if it's someone that if you just meet someone and they present themselves as a female from day one, they don't really have an excuse.
Unless the female possibly has like male characteristics, and that's why you would say he, him. Like the person has a male voice, so therefore you associate it with he, him. But they ask you, hey, I'm a she, her on day one. And you're just like, okay, so you say they, them in an attempt to smoothly transition, he, him to she, her.
That's not really ethical, though. If someone asks you, call me she, her, you
Yeah.
call them she, her. You don't say, I'm going to compromise on they, them, and slowly move towards she, her. Pronouns are a matter of basic respect. And if you slip up once or if you slip up 1,000 times, that's an innocent mistake. Like I was saying, and I sort of cut myself off, my dad kept calling me by my old pronouns for a decade after I transitioned. And every time it hurt, and every time he'd apologize. And I believe that he didn't intend any harm, but he kept fucking up. But, for you to just decide on your own this person said I'm a she, her, but I'm going to use they, them as a compromise. No, I'm going to have to disagree with you and say that is transphobic. If someone requests specific pronouns, you use them.
Not as a compromise, because a compromise sounds like you're trying to avoid their pronouns. What I'm trying to say is to help the person, start calling you she, her. Like for a lot of people, it was really difficult.
The way to learn to help start calling someone she, her is to just say she, her. You just have to bite that bullet. I mean, what you just said is kind of the equivalent of if someone keeps using the N-word and they've only ever been around white people and they never heard that it's wrong. And then, someone says, look, it's wrong to say this word. And they say, okay, for now, I'm gonna call them something else offensive, but not quite that offensive. You see what I'm saying? It's like, no,
I
you
can't.
just move straight to doing what the person asks. You don't just say, I'm going to ease myself into this. You don't ease yourself into someone's pronouns. When they say I'm she, her, you call them she, her. And if you screw up, you screw up.
I wouldn't compare it to racism exactly. I mean, those are completely different to me, but that's the thing. Some people have issues with pronouns. If they see male characteristics, they say he, him. So to help other people try to get pronouns right so they can get it right for the future for everyone and more easily, they could compromise, say they, them. Which again, even if you tell them your pronouns and the person says they, them after, that doesn't mean transphobic unless they've ignored your pronouns. They, them is gender
Well,
neutral.
that's just it. It's the ignoring. If I say I'm a she, her, and you say they, them, I say no, she, her, and you keep
Yeah.
saying they, them, they, them, they, them.
But it's
You
not
know?
ignoring if you're trying to get it right. If you're trying to get it right by using they, them to try to help you not call them a he, him. Because to me, if you call a trans woman he, him, that's more damaging, a million times more damaging than saying they, them.
It is. So basically, you're saying if someone's brain is so inclined to say he or him that the best they can do is say they, them.
If someone's having trouble with your pronouns, then they should be allowed to say they, them in replace of he, him, so they can ease their way into saying your pronouns so they don't call you a he, him, is what I'm saying.
I don't know. I have trouble wrapping my head around anyone who can be so inflexible with pronouns, but I see your point. I guess we've gotten a little far into the weeds here, though.
Yeah, so I'm gonna end the stream here. Guys, go to FNGR's channel, dislike bomb it. This man's lost his fucking mind. What the fuck is wrong with you, man? You lost your fucking mind. Okay, so that's it for the stream.
I've been saying FNGR is not too dissimilar from Vita. Watch out for him. He's dangerous.